My name is Sanmil Bumkar. I lead the Unified Experiences team for Cisco Wireless. And today I wanted to talk about what we're doing from our management strategy evolution for Cisco Wireless. I'm going to initially talk about, a recap of what we've shared last time, and then I'm going to go about some of the details, about cloud monitoring that we're going to see. There's some very interesting questions that we have been discussing internally, and I wanted to share that updates with you. But before we begin, I wanted to start with the slide that Fal shared, and that is, you know, uh, our three pillars or three customer categories. Um, this is the slide that we've already shared before, but the reason I wanted to start off on this slide is there's a different way of thinking about this slide. When you're looking at these three buckets, think about the source of truth for configuration. So if you look at the first two buckets, the source of truth for configuration is on the device, the controller. But in the third bucket, that source of truth comes to the cloud. And so I think that's kind of the difference between the three. And so think about it from that angle. And especially as we go into some of the details, right, it becomes very important because from a customer perspective, how do they configure? Where do they go to manage their devices? That's something that we have thought in this process. And also, if we are looking to keep the source of truth as a single point, because if you try to break it out, it leads to some complicated situations. So that's one of the guiding principles that we've used. And with that, I think one of the ways to look at this is for wireless, there are two predominant architecture. One is the distributed plane, one is the centralized plane. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of why one is needed versus the other, but there are two, right? And as Cisco, we have some already, but I think, if you look at the Meraki stack, I think we do need one for the centralized mode, and MCG is going to fill that gap. But if we look at the hybrid, I think that's something that we haven't done. And so that's something that we are starting to do. We started with switching, now we're starting with wireless. Why is this important? Customers have a lot of deployment. Cisco has one of the biggest, customer base out there, and transitions are hard. And for us to help our customers with that transition, we wanted to provide an option where customers can slowly start transitioning some of their services to the cloud and eventually management. Because management is probably the last thing that they move. Services starts first. And so visibility and assurance services is what we're going to start off by moving into dashboard. And then as you go to the right, I think with MCG, the management piece also moves to dashboard as well. Now, a little bit more detail. If you really think about the full on-prem, I think all of you have used it for like a long time, so I'm not going to talk about it. But from a monitoring perspective or a hybrid management perspective, as I mentioned, the management is still staying on the controller. We're just moving the visibility services, so your data aggregation services, to the cloud. So think about it as like when you connect it to Meraki dashboard, we can tell you which controller to go to and make changes. That's something that you will have available through dashboard, but then you go into the controller and make those changes. And as we go to the full cloud managed solution, I think that's where MCG comes in, and you have that full cloud management experience. The orange circles kind of talk about the control plane. So in flex mode or in distributed mode that we have with Meraki, I think the control plane is between the APs, and that's going to remain the same. Now, as we do this, how are we envisioning our customers to take advantage of this? Or rather, what do we expect our customers to get out of this? One of the things that we are expecting our customers to get out of this is basically simplified networking operations through a single pane of glass. So you can standardize Meraki dashboard as a single pane of glass. It's the cloud platform for Cisco networking, and that's the strategy that we are following. And you can see you can starting to see more and more devices starting to come to Meraki dashboard. And as you think about those, right, what use cases can be solved with this now? That goes into a next level situation, right? And if you think about it, um, event monitoring, incident response, once you connect the WLC to Meraki dashboard, it gets into the platform. So the same set of APIs are now available. Webhooks for tying into your ticketing system. So if you're using ServiceNow or any other ticketing system, you have the webhooks and alerts. You can directly tie into it and use the same user flows. So that consistency in operations, simplified operations, that's what we are targeting. And as we deliver some of the initial use cases, then we are going to start providing a little bit more, use cases like image management. I remember when 11R vulnerability went out crack. I recently started at Cisco, and it was a lot of change for a lot of customers, right? Sometimes you may have to do software upgrade. The recent vulnerability disclosure that was also done, and so doing that, orchestrating that to Meraki dashboard to kind of simplify your operations. Fal mentioned simplicity is a big tenet for us, so we are trying to make sure that we deliver to our customers through that, right? Obviously, assurance and change tracking. So if somebody makes a change, config change, we kind of get that information, and you can start seeing some of those. Some of these things will be delivered in due course of time, but these are the use cases that we are trying to address as we bring 9800 into Meraki dashboard. Now, you might be thinking, okay, I can do this with some of the other tools as well. Why go to cloud? I think if you look at the scale of Meraki dashboard is available globally. So you can log in from anywhere and have access to that data. You no longer have to go through VPNs or some of those access. We take care of all of that. And we also comply with GDPR requirements. So the data will be stored depending on the region that you're coming from. So from data residency needs as well, we are already doing it. So you just basically get into the platform and you take advantage of those things. So very straightforward. Yes.
With all this drive towards the cloud, I mean, where's DNAC heading or Cat Center?
So for customers that want to manage their own management platform, Catalyst Center is the option. That's still there. We are continually investing in there. I don't have updates this time around, but hopefully next time when we come and talk about it, we can share a little bit more. But if you look at Cisco's customer base, right, it's huge, it's varied, and there are all sorts of different requirements. So for us, we cannot just say we're going to move everybody to cloud. I think there are going to be customers that may want to stay on-prem, and or they want to manage their own management platform. There might be InfoSec requirements. For them, Catalyst Center is there. And since my job is to look at unified experiences, I look at both. So I look at both the platforms and the wireless automation adoption across both. And then the other thing is, right, while we are building tools to move customers, some verticals move faster than the other. Right? There are some verticals that may not be ready to move yet, and for them, they continue to use Catalyst Center, and we're seeing healthy adoption there too. So, as you start connecting to Meraki dashboard, what devices can be connected is the first probable question that you're asking. So we're starting with the Wave 2 APs and Wi-Fi 6 and 6E APs. Obviously, with CW, you can use it with the 9800 controller and continue down the monitoring route, or you can just completely move it over. But with the Wave 2 and Wi-Fi 6 APs, they're not dual boots. So you can continue in cloud monitoring, and you can start connecting those. Obviously, as you start refreshing, moving to cloud management is something that, will be available to you. That also goes into that slow move that, customers have to do for larger deployments. And that's something that we have to think about. From a controller perspective, we're talking about the 9800 controllers. AirOS is not supported because I think it's going end of life as well. So that's something that customers will have to move away from. The biggest thing is cloud monitoring is included in the existing licenses, no new licenses. I know there's been questions about Cisco licenses, so we are not adding anything. It's included in the DNA licenses. And if you have Essential as advantage, you just connect and start using. And Karthik is going to do a demo of how that shows in a little bit. Um, now that I talked about the devices that can connect, going one level deeper, what are the requirements for the devices to connect, right? One of the changes that we're doing from previously that we've done with switching is we are actually adding native connectivity on the software. So you can just go into the software and say connect to Meraki dashboard, no app needed, and you can then just go in and claim the devices, and the onboarding is quick. What that also means is there's going to be a firmware dependency. So starting 17.12, you will get that native connectivity, and that's a mandatory requirement for cloud monitoring, and you can use that. Initially, we are starting with a scale of 2,000 access points and 20,000 clients per controller. But I think we were looking at the data, and majority of the deployments fall in that bucket. Now, as we start coming into dashboard, I think you have to think about the constructs in dashboard. There's a network, right? And so you have to think about some of the uh, uh, guidelines that we have given to our customers. So if you're deploying a single network, we recommend 1,000 APs. And I'll talk about if you have more than that, how do you split that? It's mainly to ensure that you have good performance, because at the end of the day, it's just loading data, and the page performance is something that we are mindful of. And one of the things is do not mix cloud native APs with monitored APs. It has to be in separate networks, and I'll go into a little bit of detail with that. Right? Now, once you've connected, what are some of the capabilities that we are looking at as we start bringing into the controllers into dashboard, right? So from a controller perspective, for an AP perspective, and from a client perspective, those are the three broad buckets. Right? Looking at the client data, what are the traffic patterns it's seeing? What are the applications it's seeing? What are the applications that are being used, right? And once you connect this, a lot of this information will also be available through APIs. So you can actually pull that out. And if you have any custom, dashboards that you're building of the data, you can start accessing that information as well. Last but not least, just reiterating, the licensing piece. I think you will have this available through the base licensing or DNA Essentials and DNA Advantage, right? The NBAR information is available only through DNA Advantage, but you can see that all the different applications that you can start seeing. And with that, let's quickly take a look of how you can onboard the device. Karthik is going to quickly do a demo. Over to you, Karthik.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karthik. I'm a technical marketing engineer at Cisco's Wireless Group. And today we'll take a look at how do we onboard a 9800 wireless controller to a Meraki dashboard, and then just take a look and feel of how you can troubleshoot your network right on the dashboard. So starting off with onboarding itself. I'm sure you folks are familiar with this particular page. It's a 9800 web UI. So as of now, these APs, this controller is not onboarded on dashboard. How does it look before that? Here is my AP statistics, all the APs that Sunil mentioned about. You can look at it right here. We have a new tab right on the right side which says Meraki ID. They don't really have a Meraki ID right now. The reason is this controller hasn't onboarded yet. So let's look at the next part of it. You also have some APs that are the CW APs which support both Meraki and Catalyst. So after we enable it, and how do you enable it? It's the part that Sunil mentioned. It's the easiest one-click thing. If you have used Catalyst Center or DNA Spaces, you know about cloud services. You go to that cloud services page, there's a new tab right there called Meraki. And you enable that Meraki enable button, apply it, and you would see the magic happen right there. That's about it on the 9800 side. You would see the tunnel establishment, you would see a Meraki ID right there, you would see all of the statistics that you need, all the data that you need to onboard your 9800 controller on your dashboard. Once you have done this step, now make sure you take that Meraki ID handy, and we have to put it on the dashboard as well. So once we have done this step, let's check all our APs, what is happening there. Our APs now start getting a Meraki ID now that they have been registered on the dashboard. Now the next step would be to onboard it on the dashboard itself. Let's check it out how to do it. So going to the dashboard, like Sunmil recommended, we don't really merge your MR existing deployment with your your cloud monitoring deployment. So make sure that stays separate. We're creating a new network right here in the organization. Create a new network and give it a name. And make sure you claim the Meraki ID that you received from your 9800 UI. And you'll be given an option to either create a brand new network, or you have an option to use an existing MS or an MX network for that matter. But make sure you don't really, overlap with your existing Meraki network. But apart from that, we also have an option to use site tag based networks. So if you have already created, like our recommendation is to have one network per building, that also goes with the site tag on the 9800 side. So this workflow will create individual networks for all of your site tags as well. So once we go ahead with this step, make sure you put in your credentials for your SSH access. And once we confirm, you would see your access points and your controller on the dashboard. Now let's quickly go onto the dashboard and see how it would look like over there. What are the new pages that we have added? The first and foremost thing is, on the organization level, if you go in here to a wireless LAN controller page, this will show all the WLAN controllers that you have onboarded in your organization. And this again shows up to your wireless network as well. Right here, when you click here, you would see the same exact thing. And when I click on the WLAN controller, this is my details about my 9800 controller itself. It's showing me what model it is. It's giving me my local IP address, my public IP address. And here it gives me a chassis itself. It shows what ports are connected. Obviously, right now, it's kind of a little bit closer to the EFT image. The GA image will have your green ports, red ports, and all of that colors coming in. And if you have an HA SSO pair, you would see both the controllers right here showing which ports are enabled. And we have some live data available as well, like showing you what number of APs are here, what number of clients are there. For some reason, it's still loading. I think it's bad connectivity. But then again, we have the historical data of your clients, what your connectivity speed is looking like, and all that important stats that you want to look at from a 9800 controller perspective. When getting into the ports part of it, pretty sure you want to look at what ports are enabled. It shows you the green status, what VLANs are enabled on my controller. And getting into all the list of access points, this is something new here. You would see all the APs that are associated with the 9800 right here. I think there's a slight delay. So you would see all the APs right here, which are up, which are running. And you have an option here in the filters to also look at the individual site tags that are been assigned to all of the access points. And some Catalyst specific filters as well, which you want to know, like what mode of AP it is, and depending on what model, what version code, all of that is mentioned right here. Now, if I click on a particular AP, which is something native to Catalyst, like 9130, I'm clicking on this one. How does it look? It gives you a similar feel of a Meraki AP, how an MR AP would look like. From top down, there are some changes that we have added. You would see a monitor-only sign right here. That is new. Then we have something called as a wireless controller right here. It will show what controller it's connected to, what are the tags, all the site tag, policy tag, and RF tag, what mode it's operating. This is all new stuff. This is only something you will see on a cloud monitoring device. But apart from that, we are retaining everything else. We have all of the basic troubleshooting pages that you require to troubleshoot a wireless network, your event logs, your location. That's specific, again, to adding a location for your access points. When you get into performance, you would see what's the overall utilization, what is your client count in that particular AP, and all of those stats, right, like similar to what you would see on a Meraki AP. With that said, I want to give it back to Sunil.
Is all of this essentials?
This is all essentials. The only thing that won't be included is NBAR. So something like, say, for example, if I go to clients, and over here, if I want to look at the NBAR details, that is something advantage as of now. But there'll be more features coming in. And the differentiation is going to come in as we develop more features and bring it more in.
All right. So Karthik mentioned something about, during the onboarding flow, how we bring the devices in by site tags. And there's a specific reason why we were thinking along those lines. So before I talk into the details, I wanted to quickly talk about, some of the constructs that we have in Meraki dashboard. So in Meraki dashboard, you have the construct of a network and an organization. Whereas on the WLC, you have a site tag, policy tag, and RF tag, right? And So those are like slight differences over there. And so as you're thinking about bringing these devices in, there are some things that we want to recommend for customers as best practices. So for wireless, we are saying do not mix native managed and monitor devices, because there are some services like auto RF and these that kind of run into it that are tied to the network. But for switching, it doesn't apply. So switching, you can mix monitored and managed, and some customers are already doing that. But as you have that full list, I think you can see that end-to-end connectivity data path as well. So we have a recommendation that, for wireless, keep the monitored and managed separately. You can have the, MS switches and the Catalyst switches. And so basically you can have a combined network. So you can see the full building or full network at a time. And so now going into the next level detail, now you've pulled in, your switching is there. As you're thinking about it, we are recommending that, you think about per building, because that way, it's easier to look in its own silo. So basically, if I take the San Jose campus, they have 24 buildings. We have 24 buildings. Each building can be its own network. And from a visibility perspective, you can identify all the clients in that building. From a visibility perspective, what applications are going in. It's pulling from the controller, but it's much easier to consume that data rather than going and looking at it from a bigger one. And that has been the basis of how we have approached that onboarding flow, which is why you're seeing the site tag. And so that brings me to the controller view, right? On a controller view, as we mentioned, policy tag, RF tag, and site tag. So if you look at policy, it's mainly for security. If you look at RF, it's mainly for RF setting. Site tags are generally the ones that are associated to the location. And so that's what we are recommending to actually use as a filter to kind of, do that. Now, if you don't want to use it, you can, use the option to pull the existing, put it all in one network, and then you can select the APs and move into different networks if you choose to do so. So there is some options that you have, but we're trying to make it as easy and seamless as possible based on some of the research that we've done. Generally, site tags are the ones that, have worked. And if you think about, the 9800 view that Karthik was showing, generally you have, okay, there's a slight delay. Generally, you have the site tag filter that you can look at over there, and you can pull those in. And then once you have a site tag, that appropriate, building name is automatically created. So when you're pulling site tags, it'll just learn the site tag and use that name to create the new network. So if you create 10 networks, the site tag will get translated to the network name. So Catalyst has two different modes, right? One is the local mode, which is like your all-in-one mode. And if you think about the all-in-one mode, you have all the APs in like one building or two buildings, like a campus design. You can put it in each network, or for a couple of buildings, a customer might choose to just put it in all-in-one network. So you have this all-in-one option. So you have the org, you have the network, and your controller and APs kind of go in there, right? And the second one, actually, as you put in there on the controller page, I think one of the things that we did not show is there's actually a hyperlink on the controller page that shows you which network the AP belongs to. So you can see the network. You can immediately click on the network, and you can directly go into the network, and you can start it. So there are pages that are linked to ensure that the user flows are pretty simple and very intuitive to use. Now the other one is the distributed mode, the flex mode, right? You can have that deployed in, if you're a retail customer, every store has its own, and then traffic is going to a central location, or you can have a controller per store as well. Or you can have, distributed sites that are coming back to a single controller, and the controller is in a DMZ. So in order to do that, I think you can have like a site-based design, as I mentioned. Again, the site tag concept comes in, and you can then learn, or rather you can put all of the devices into the respective networks. Now there's a couple of options here too. Where do you put the controller? The controller can be put in its own network, completely separate from all the APs, or the controller may be in one specific site that you can put it in as well. And you can keep the building separate. But as long as you can go to the controller, it will show all the APs and you can quickly go to the respective networks over there. So it all ties back to the controller. And then for a site-based, previously I showed everything in a single network, but in a site-based, you can start seeing all of the different networks that are starting to show up. Again, very easy to click, easy to go through, and pretty straightforward.